Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Franchise Hockey Manager 8 playthrough of the New York Islanders. We are the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions after really pushing all of our chips into the table over the past few seasons. That's the good news. The bad news is that as we begin the offseason, we're already about $3 million over the salary cap, and that is while letting last year's big acquisition, Panarin, hit free agency. He's the top free agent out there. We took a quick look at him, and he's looking for over $10 million a year, even at age 34. So as great a season as he had for us last year, and you can see 43 goals and 50 assists while winning a Stanley Cup is a pretty great season. Just no way we could possibly bring him back, even at that $10 million salary that he's looking for, which is a little less than we paid him last season when we took him on from the Rangers. Looking at the roster, right now we've got 8 defensemen up, so one key move is going to be trading away at least one, if not possibly 2 defensemen. The reason I say 2 is that we still have in the minors one of the top prospects in our system, Matteo Rotundi, who was up for 16 games last year. Want to make sure that we open up a spot for him. So to do that, we will likely be trading away a couple of our defensemen in the relatively near term. And that hopefully also will help us get under the salary cap. I don't think we're going to have a lot of money to do anything crazy with this offseason. The salaries of some of the younger players on our team have started to go up over the last couple of years. So that's why even though we had Panarin last year and we're under the cap, we're over the cap without him this year because some extensions have started to kick in on some of our 20-somethings who have been up in the NHL for 3 or 4 years at this point. So I'd say that shipping away a couple of defensemen to open up the salary cap space to get under the cap and also bring up Rotundi is probably job one. Jiricek, who was up most of last season, 47 games, is also hopefully going to be up the entire season this year. So probably need to trade away a couple of defensemen to open up a spot for Rotundi, and then either add or bring up a left winger. You can see we've got 3 on the roster right now at the NHL level. Pretty happy with our forwards in general at this point. But certainly need one more forward and one less defenseman on the NHL roster when all of our moves are said and done. Not going to be too exciting for us at the draft this year. We don't have a first-round pick, becoming a regular habit for us. But after this year, we're all caught up. So unless we do something crazy in the coming weeks in terms of trading away future picks, at least we will finally have a first-rounder next year. Which will be nice again. Well, we're about to get rid of one of the defensemen, Kyle Capobianco, who we've had on the team for the past 2 seasons, 2 championship seasons. Has been a good defenseman for us, but he's a little more of an offensive guy. And he's also getting older. He's going to turn 29 soon. We only have him locked up for 1 more year. So when we picked him up a couple seasons ago, we had to give Blade Jenkins a 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th for him. We just received an offer for a 2nd and a 4th for the Ducks to get rid of him. So seems pretty good to us. We've had him on the team for 2 years, and now we're kind of getting back some of the picks over the next couple of years that we've gotten rid of. So we are going to go ahead and complete that trade. Also, try to do a better job in this one of giving you the play-by-play of everything we're doing. We have made an offer to Nikita Chibrikov, who was in the KHL for several years. You can see over there the past few years. He was a 2021 draft pick that was never signed in the NHL. 3.5 star player, 3.5 star potential. So we've made an offer to him that would be great for the hole that we potentially have at left wing to be able to bring him on board. But it sounds like there are other teams interested in bringing him back. So we'll see whether he ends up signing with us or not. But that will open up a spot potentially for him, or the trade that we just made will open up a spot for him. Still need to kind of figure out whether we want to trade away another defenseman or not. The likely one that we would trade is John Marino, who is coming off a nice year for us. Another defenseman that's been with us the last couple years. After we made a trade, we had to trade away 2/5, as well as Josh Doan, who looks like he's now a free agent. So it doesn't seem like, he's never even made it up to the NHL. So that was a good trade for us. Marino getting up there in years, though, in the last year of his contract. I guess we'll see, what he's looking for in terms of an extension. Looking for even more, close to $4.9 million a year. So probably time for us to move on from him. That will definitely put us under the cap and give us a little flexibility if we want to dip our toes into free agency a bit this year, or perhaps look at the trade block as the offseason moves along. Well, a little bit of a change in plans. We're thinking about trading Andrew Peake instead of Marino. Thought is that if you look at Peake, we have him for 3 more years at a little over $2 million a year. But his profile, 13 offense, 15 defense, 14 for physical and mental. And when we look at Marino, he's the same offensively overall with a 13, but he's 16 defensively with 15 for physical and mental. So a little more of a talented player, obviously making a lot more money and in the last year of his contract. But our team is built to win right now. We're going for a three-peat, even though we don't want to maybe publicly admit that. But that's obviously the goal of playing this season. And the thought is that, keeping Marino around will make us a little stronger in terms of trying to win again. The issue, though, with Peake is that $2.05 million, we did just sign Chibrikov, and with him on the team now, the salary is $83.7 million. So even if we trade away Peake, that's going to put us at about $81.7 million. So we're still just going to be a couple $100,000 above the salary cap if we trade Peake rather than Marino, which will mean that we'll need to make another move. Kind of looking around at the team, I don't know what that would be. I think it's probably Connor Zary, who's making $1.26 million, trading him away and bringing up someone on a minimum contract. That would be the way to potentially keep Marino, trade away Peake, and then ultimately kind of get our first 23 to just under the salary cap. So I kind of like what Zary's done for us over the past few years. Actually, is it only last season that we had him? Wow. Time flies. He was waived. Okay, yeah, he was waived a little over. He's been with us for a season and a half. But yeah, we picked him up on waivers, and then he was on the roster the rest of the 2025 season, and then was with us through last year too. No, I guess not. Sorry, I'm confused here. Anyhow, he's been a solid contributor for us, but you see, only 11 minutes a game. He's got 2 years left on his contract, but you look for somebody that we can get rid of and replace with a minimum level player and kind of make up the difference we'll need to get under the cap. We're obviously not getting rid of Peake. The other option is Xavier Bourgault, but I think he's got a little more long-term potential than Zary does, even though they're both pretty young. Those would be the two obvious moves. Bobby Brink also, but again, I think he's more somebody that we're planning on building around over the next couple of years. But could also depend on what we could get for any of them in a trade. I'm guessing we would get more for a Bobby Brink or potentially Bourgault than we would for Zary in a trade. But we've got options, so I think I'm leaning towards accepting the trade that we have offered here from the Capitals, who are going to give us 2 third-rounders for Peake. That seems like the way to go for me, so we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. And as you can see, now we're $175,000 over the salary cap at this point, with 23 players on the team, including 7 defensemen, 2 goalies, and 14 forwards. So the roster is kind of looking the way we want it to. Just kind of have to decide. Honestly, it seems like which one of the 3 forwards we're going to replace with someone on a minimum contract, and then I kind of think we have the 23 that we're going to plan on going into the 2026 to 2027 season with. Obviously, that could change on the margins, but we're still going to be right up against the cap, so probably not going to be able to do anything too radical. Well, we've got a trade offer on Connor Zary that we kind of have to accept. He is a good young player, 24 years old, but the Kings are willing to give us a first in next year's draft as well as a 6th for him. So given that we kind of need to trade somebody to open up space under the salary cap, we are going to go ahead and ship Zary off. So now we'll have 2 first-rounders next year, our own and the Kings, so that'll be a nice change for us when the draft rolls around. Hopefully our pick will once again be at the end of the draft, but we'll figure that out over the coming 10 months or so. So we need to bring up somebody just to kind of fill out the team to see what the roster looks like, preferably a left winger. Zhugin, the 21-year-old, you can see looks like potentially an interesting offensive player. Really probably not an NHL level defenseman at this point. You can see pretty weak defensive ratings actually, but sound physically, good mentally, and offers a bit on the offensive side. Probably want him to spend the year in Bridgeport. So can kind of bring up one of the veterans instead. Reese Newkirk is in Bridgeport for a couple years. At this point, Matthew Joseph has been up and down, 29 years old now, but he's been up and down with the team a lot. Stromgren, also maybe I'll bring up Stromgren for now. He's still got a little potential to get better. The other options would be Matvei Petrov, who did play 1 game with us last year, as well as potentially Jeremy Leroux, although he probably needs a little more seasoning. He was in the juniors still last year. We had drafted him a while back. We did just recently sign him to his entry-level contract, but he's going to need to be in the minors. Cameron Berg is one option who can play center and left wing. He actually had a pretty solid season for us at Bridgeport last year. So let's put Berg up on the roster. Obviously, this will change potentially. We'll give it more thought than that when we get to the actual season. But we're at $81.24 million in salary with 23 players now. So we will be under the cap if this is the roster that we need to go with. So I think we've probably done our heavy lifting for the off season, even though it's only July 11th. I think it may end up being a different off season than it has been in recent years, where we've been incredibly active through free agency and trades. Looks like our good pal Panarin has signed with somebody, since he's not out on the free agent list anymore, which is fine. We knew we weren't going to be able to sign him, but let's see where he ended up here. Should be the largest number out there. Yeah, 10.34 million for a year over 2 years. He signed with Minnesota. So thank you for what you did for us. Thank you for helping deliver a cup. It was an expensive rental, but we won the cup, so it paid off. So we will circle back as the off-season proceeds, but like I said, I think it's going to be a relatively quiet off-season for us the rest of the way. We've got a Stanley Cup winning roster that, although we lost Panarin, kind of like the moves that we've made on the margins, going to have Rotundi up with the big team now. Chibrikov will be up potentially, and now Cameron Berg will be potentially up. So, three rookies on the roster. Still have great goaltending, pretty solid defense. Offense has been better the last couple of years since we kind of blew the old Islanders up. Barzal will have more pressure on him as the captain, and then also as our most dynamic offensive player by far without Panarin on a line with him this year. You can see that his production actually went down a bit. He scored 5 fewer goals and had 9 fewer assists last year. While playing with Panarin, so hopefully he can make up some of that gap when he is once again the clear number one offensive option for the New York Islanders. Just made one more signing for organizational depth. It's August 2nd. We signed Fabian Wagner from Sweden. Was a player who was predicted to be picked in the NHL draft 4 years ago. Never was actually picked. Been playing in the Swedish league for the last couple years. Really looks like he's most likely organizational depth. 2.5 star consensus, 3.5 star, 2.5 star consensus ability, 3.5 star potential. But looks like, he could potentially be a decent player for us to bring up in a pinch if we need some depth because of injuries. Thinking about the overall roster, we've also signed a couple of our previous draft picks who will be down at lower levels of the minors most likely. Daniil Boot, who we had acquired in the third round back in 2023, just finally signed him to his entry-level contract. And then also Otto Stenberg, who was our second round pick that same year, 2023, just finally signed him to an entry-level contract. So feel like we've got a lot of depth across the organization now. Should have some pretty good young players, not only on the Islanders roster, but also potentially playing at Bridgeport and Worcester. Feel almost like we're a little light on defense now, having traded away the 2 veterans and bringing up Rotundi. But I think we still, in a pinch, have enough depth that will be at Bridgeport. And then obviously we can keep an eye on the waiver wire. And with that first round draft pick that we did get back in one of the trades, we certainly have ammunition if we want to or need to make a trade when we're in the regular season before the trade deadline. If we have a significant injury, we've got a little ammo now that we're rebuilding the stock of draft picks after depleting them significantly over the last few years. Kind of going to spend a little time now looking over the expiring contracts we're going to have for next season and figure out who we might want to extend. Marino, as we've talked about, will be tough. Glad to have him for this year at $4.4 million, but he'll be 30 next season. And looking for, as we mentioned earlier, close to $5 million a year for an extension, so we'll probably let him go. But Jiricek, Tanner Howe, our first round pick from a few years ago, and Marcus Almquist are kind of key players for us to extend. Newkirk, Joseph, and Malinin are more kind of organizational depth, probably not as important, but same thing with Tristan Lennox. We've got a lot of decent young goaltenders. If we can get any of those players back at a kind of, million or less contract, we'll probably sign them just for organizational depth, but certainly not going to chase after for any of those last four too hard. Well, I think we've done most of the signing of extensions that we wanted to. We re-signed Marcus Almquist and David Jarachik, both to $1.25 million a year for the next 3 years. They were going to be restricted free agents. Also extended Tristan Lennox and Alexei Malinin for somewhat lower amounts. Marino, as we've talked about, we're not going to extend right now. Joseph in Newkirk. Joseph is 29. Let him play out his contract. Reese Newkirk, a little bit more of a debate. He did have a nice year in Bridgeport last year, but we are so deep at center that I'm probably not going to extend him right now. Which brings us to Tanner Howe, who was our first-round pick, 20th overall, just over 2 years ago. He's been a Stanley Cup champion with us in each of his first 2 years, went right from the WHL to the NHL. You can see he scored 40 points in each of his first 2 seasons, getting a little more playing time and a little higher game rating last season compared to his rookie year. So kind of making progress. When our scouts look at Howe, still see him as a player with Beauvillier type of potential. So certainly somebody we want to bring or we want to sign. You can see we think he's 3.5 stars, and that's about as good as he's going to be. Consensus is his potential can still get a little better. But he is a good young player, only 20 years old, someone who's going to continue most likely getting better. Nice offensive player, solid defensive profile. Mentally, not necessarily as strong, but still more than acceptable. And then some real strong physical ratings, particularly in balance and speed. So certainly a player that we want to bring back. He's looking for a bit more, $3.54 million for 3 years. We're going to put auto qualify on just in case we can't get a deal done with him. Going to try to hope that this didn't lock up on me. That would be a problem if the game is locked up on me. Hopefully that's not the case. Hold, please. Oh, very interesting. His contract demand exceeds our budget. Well, that is going to make things interesting. That's why it won't be letting us increase those numbers. Interesting. Obviously, we have to deal with the cap, but we also have the issue of the annual budget, and we have been using a normal budget rather than a higher budget here. So it looks like that may cost us a little bit. That other budget was going to give us a little more flexibility for extensions for next year. So we can't sign Tanner Howe right now. Ultimately, I'm not too worried about it. We'll make sure that we put the auto qualify on him, and then we'll get the opportunity to match anything. And hopefully, even if he does technically hit free agency, we won't. We're not going to let him hit free agency. If I look at our salary obligations in next season, it doesn't. I guess Almquist is going to be a little higher than he was this year. And I guess that's the issue. Yeah, we just re-signed Jarachek and Almquist, and we are so close to the cap right now that we're already And then we've got commitments to other guys. So we probably should have signed him before we signed some of those extensions to players who are less important. Okay, so it would have been nice to get Tanner Howe all locked up right now, but we will certainly be able to hopefully figure that out. Someone will get injured or we'll make a trade during the season, and we'll clear up some cap space, or not even cap space, but just budget space for next season, so we can fit him in under the budget that we have. So won't be a problem. We're going to make sure to get him signed, but we'll just have to remember to do that at the end of the regular season. All right, it's September 25th, and we are at the start of training camp, playing our first preseason game at the Kings. We've got 40 players in camp this year. We've only got 43 people under contract, so just about everyone is going to get a little bit of run with the big club in camp over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. Hopefully get a little action, and then we'll see how things look from a perspective in terms of improvement of the players. Get a nice report on them coming out of the camp. Don't think there's going to be any significant surprises. Probably going to be the 23 people that we had on the roster when we were doing our salary cap thinking a couple of months ago. But you never know what can happen. And the big goal at this point is just have no major injuries over these couple weeks of preseason hockey. And the other big decision will be picking our second assistant captain with the departure of Panarin. That opens up a spot for someone to join Barzal and Adam Fox as a captain of the Islanders. Looking at the Islanders, other than Barzal and Fox, got a couple of good leaders. Beauvillier is kind of an obvious one. We have him under contract another few years. He's been here for quite some time at this point. Look at the ratings, and he's a good team player, good leadership, excellent temperament and professionalism. So he's kind of the obvious choice. We'll look through a couple other people, though. Marino, probably going to be his last year with us. A good veteran. If you look at the numbers, might be slightly better as a captain than Beauvillier, but we know we're going to be letting him go. Probably don't want a one-year captain. Wahlstrom, also a good leader. I just don't think he makes enough of an impact on the ice compared to Beauvillier. And prefer Beauvillier as a potential captain. And then final good leader is Reese Newkirk. He's probably not even going to make the roster. You can see he's been at Bridgeport for the last 4 seasons, so not going to be making him a captain, although he's got some nice leadership traits. Among the spark plugs, Bobby Brink and Alexander Campbell have been around a while. They would be the ones, but it's hard to imagine. Looking at their profiles and just looking at their age, it's hard to imagine either of them is going to be a better choice to wear the A than Beauvillier will be. But we'll give Campbell a look. Campbell actually, a pretty good team player, solid leadership, great temperament and professionalism. He could, potentially be a captain at some point in the future. But Beauvillier is the one who gets the honor right now. Point him the alternate 2 as we begin the preseason. Well, we are at the end of training camp. Got a few interesting decisions. If you look at our goalies, Peake is hopefully our number 1, although Ottinger got more action than him last year. But Brett Brochu was getting action in some of the preseason games. Peake got most of the action. Brochu started a couple of games. Ottinger didn't play. I think we keep Ottinger for the time being, but Brochu probably needs to be up at some point. Certainly, if either of the goalies get hurt, Brochu would be up. But it may be a situation where if we have some injuries, or if we want to just open up some salary cap space during the season to go after a better player, we may look to actually trade Ottinger. Going to send Brochu down for the time being. But Ottinger's days with the Islanders, as great as he's been for us, could be numbered with the quality that we have with the young goalies, and the fact that he's got a larger cap hit. And clearly, if we do get rid of Ottinger at some point, that'll ensure that we can re-sign Tanner Howe before he hits restricted free agency, and we don't mess anything up there. The other interesting decision we have, Jugin, you'll remember from a while back, was who we kind of moved up to the roster. Thought that he would potentially, be the last man standing. But Jeremy Leroux, who was our second round pick in 2024, just looks like he's becoming a beast, and he's never even played outside of the minors, or outside of the juniors, I should say. But 15-13 for his offensive, defensive, physical, and mental profiles. The 20-year-old looks like he belongs. The issue is he would be our sixth right wing, and he doesn't really play anything else. So with Konechny and Natchez and Brink and Wahlstrom and Almquist also on the right wing, I just don't think he's going to get a lot of playing time if we keep him up. So I think in Konechny, you can see, has a minor injury there. That's a day-to-day bruised hip. He should be more than ready when the actual season starts, because although the preseason is now over, we've got 10 days until the first regular season game. So he should certainly be healthy then. So Leroux is... looks like he could be a really big part of our future, but I think I am going to send him down simply because I think he'll just get more ice time in Bridgeport. I don't see any point in even sending him to Worcester. Think even though this is his first professional experience, put him right in the AHL rather than the ECHL with the profile that he has. So a little soft at left wing. Happy with Chibrikov, who's pretty experienced and 23 years old, coming over from the KHL. Jugin is kind of our question mark on the roster, but we're at $81.3 million right now. There will be injuries, but he can also play right wing, so he's a little more versatile. But certainly doesn't look like he's going to be the type of defender that we're going to want kind of grinding out on the fourth line. So I think there is potential, if he's just not playing at all, or if he's not quite ready for the NHL, that we'll send him down and bring up somebody else to kind of get those 8, 10, 12 minutes, whatever he's going to be getting, as our kind of an occasional fourth line wing for us. And actually, we're going to send Jugin down to Bridgeport and bring up William Stromgren instead. He's been with the organization a little longer. He's a couple years older, and he's better defensively than Jugin is. I think Jugin definitely has potential to be an interesting offensive player, but right now we're going to go with the slightly more experienced veteran in Stromgren as our 23rd player on the roster as we prepare for the regular season. So thanks so much for watching. It was a much less eventful offseason for the Islanders than the past couple have been. Hopefully that doesn't mean that we still can't make a long run in the playoffs. We will see what happens in the 2026-2027 regular season in our next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day.